culture was a culture of death, and their lives were focused on ensuring entry into the afterlife. Their unique process of mummifying the remains of their rulers and members of the elite inspired numerous books and movies, and the monsters within still haunt our dreams. And even today, excavation of ancient sites continue, constantly unearthing new secrets that lay hidden under the sands for thousands of years. So, get ready. From the tomb of the Keeper of Secrets to the mummy with the golden tongue, this is 15 strangest things recently discovered in Egypt. Number 15. Cleopatra's Tomb. Some say the golden age of archaeology is long past, yet we are learning about new discoveries all the time. But even so, there is one mystery that keeps eluding the experts. Where is the final resting place of the most famous queen of Egypt? Where is Cleopatra's tomb? There are numerous myths and legends about Cleopatra. Her contemporaries believed her to be the embodiment of Isis, the goddess of healing and magic. Her lovers included the most powerful men of her time, like Julius Caesar and Mark Antony. The latter one would be a gamble she was destined to lose. Once she knew her end was near, legend says she took her own life with the bite of a poison snake. She was the last ruler of the Ptolemaic dynasty, ascending the throne at the age of 18 with her brother. Her rule would be marked by an intersection of love, wealth, power, politics, and diplomacy. Perhaps that is the reason her name was forever written in the annals of history, apart from her ravaging beauty. But there are a few clues as to the whereabouts of her final resting place. According to legend, she was buried next to Mark Antony, her lover. Experts assume the tomb is located somewhere in ancient Alexandria, but sadly, that means it has been submerged beneath the Mediterranean Sea. So far, the attempts to find the tomb have failed, but researchers are still looking, and who knows, maybe they get lucky. It seems that excavations in the Saharan desert have not stopped since the early 19th century, but recently, experts unearthed a new discovery in Egypt that terrifies scientists. During an excavation near the Temple of Isis, near Osiris Magna, experts stumbled upon a strange-looking sarcophagus. It had bizarre markings akin to demonic figures, and even the inscriptions seemed to be in an archaic form of hieroglyphs that no one could decipher. But the biggest surprise came when they opened the sarcophagus and saw a mummy that looked like a horned demon. It was unlike any mummy ever before, and the locals fled the scene never to return. Sadly, the fate of the mummy is unknown. Just days after it was found, it disappeared without a trace. Experts say it probably ended up on the black market like so many of them do, but some believe it was taken by a clandestine society that wants to protect its secrets. We just might never know the real truth about what it was and what happened to it. Comment down below with the hashtag #UntoldTopic and let us know your opinion in relation to what we just showed on screen. With that said, let's keep things moving. Number 14. The Sakara Necropolis. Have you ever heard of the Sakara Necropolis? It is located just outside the capital of Egypt, Cairo. Among other finds, it contains the Pyramid of Djoser, the oldest complete stone building complex in history. But Djoser was not alone. At least 16 other Egyptian kings built their pyramids at Sakara, and even high officials built their private funeral monuments there. For over 3,000 years, this place has been used for burials and cult ceremonies. The excavation of the locality is far from finished, and it looks like new finds just keep coming. Just this year, the Egyptian authorities unveiled a series of fascinating new discoveries from that location. What the archaeologists found were not one, but two ancient tombs that date back to the 5th and 6th dynasties of the Old Kingdom. That's around 2500 to 2100 BC. What we do know so far is that one of the tombs belonged to a priest named Nunjadef. Okay, that's the last time I tried pronouncing his name. Let's just call him the priest. The other tomb belonged to a palace official named Mary, who held the title of the Keeper of Secrets. Wow, that's a pretty cool title to have. I wonder what secrets he was keeping. Among the many artifacts found, there was a sarcophagus covered in gold. Imagine the look on that archaeologist's face when he laid his eyes upon the golden sarcophagus. I'm guessing it was priceless. Number 13. Room hidden for 4,500 years. Everybody's heard of the Great Pyramids of Giza, and most people do not care to think that there are other important archaeological locations in Egypt. 200 kilometers away, in a desert area known as the Wadi al-Jarf, located close to the Red Sea. Not much to see at first look, only barren mountains made of limestone and hundreds of mounds. Excavations in the area started in the 1950s, but soon stopped due to the Suez Crisis. A French team resumed the archaeological work in 2011, but it seems they were onto something. Experts found entrances to caves and rooms that have been hidden from sight for over 4,500 years. The discovery was made on a limestone hill. Even though it might look like an ordinary hill from above, in reality, an entire network of tunnels have been cut into the limestone. Before they were abandoned, massive stones weighing thousands of tons each were placed at the entrance so no one could get in. But what was so important that it had to be hidden in such a way? As it turns out, this desolate place was actually the oldest known artificial harbor in the world. As such, more than 100 anchors have been found so far. In addition to that, jars have also been discovered, suggesting trade was happening across the Red Sea. One of the most important finds at the Wadi al-Jarf were remnants of papyrus scrolls from the 4th dynasty. These are the oldest known Egyptian papyrus ever to be discovered. Number 12. The Lost City. Finding pyramids and temples in the Egyptian sand is nothing new. But recently, archaeologists managed to unearth an entire lost city. The discovery was made near the city of Luxor. Although pyramids gave us an important insight into the religious beliefs of the ancient Egyptians, finding an ancient city can teach us much more about not just the way pharaohs lived, but also the everyday lives of ordinary people. This city is believed to have flourished over 3,000 years ago. The discovery was announced by the real-life Indiana Jones, the famous Egyptologist Zahi Hawass. He said that this was the largest ancient city ever to be uncovered in Egypt. The name of the city was Aten, and the buzz around its discovery is immense. Experts are even calling it the most important archaeological find since the discovery of the tomb of Tutankhamun. Experts believe the city was built during the rule of Amenhotep III, which dates from 1391 to 1353 BC. He was one of Egypt's most powerful pharaohs, who ruled with an iron fist. Egypt was never as rich or as great again after the rule of Amenhotep III. When the city was rediscovered in September 2020, it had almost complete walls, and rooms were filled with tools used for daily life. Hundreds of pieces of jewelry, colored pottery, scare beetle amulets, and mud bricks with the seal of Amenhotep III were found. Let's just hope that no curses were associated with those things. Number 11. The underground caves of Sakara. If you have been paying attention from the start, you know that Sakara is a huge necropolis with numerous amazing archaeological finds. But did you know that there is an entire maze of underground tunnels located under it? The sad truth is that these tunnels have been used by looters and grave robbers who try to take everything of value. And by everything, I mean even the mummies themselves, who can fetch a nice price on the black market. The thing is, the ancient Egyptians didn't just mummify people. They also mummified animals, such as hawks, ibises, and baboons. Until the experts of the 19th century realized Sakara was actually an extremely valuable archaeological location. Most of the locations were already pillaged. The French Egyptologist Auguste Mariette called it a spectacle of utter devastation. Even though Sakara was figuratively torn apart, it still managed to teach us about the burials and cult ceremonies that took place there for more than 3,000 years. There was one tomb that was luckily found intact. It belonged to a high-ranking priestess named Watya. Of course, some discoveries were stranger than others. For example, Bubastion, the temple devoted to the cat goddess Bastet. Yep, cat lovers must be jumping for joy knowing that cats had their own temple in ancient Egypt. But it's not all that strange when you know that cats were considered to be magical creatures that brought luck. And yes, cats were mummified too, which just goes to show that they were treated like royalty. Number 10. Hundreds of mummies. Now that I've mentioned Bubastion, it's only fair to keep talking about it, because in May 2022, there was a mega discovery of mummies at the location. It is so weird to me that Sakara was neglected by archaeologists for so long. Everyone was so enthralled by the pyramids of Giza that no one really paid attention to it, but someone eventually started paying attention. And now that excavations are underway, Sakara turned out to be a gift that keeps on giving. Her latest gift was in the form of 250 mummies, 150 bronze statues, and numerous bronze vessels believed to have been used in rituals of the goddess Isis. The bronze statues depicted various ancient Egyptian deities, such as Osiris, Isis, Anubis, Amun-Min, Nefertum, Bastet, and Hathor. One of the statues stood out, for it was not depicting a god. Even though it was headless, experts believe it to be the depiction of Imhotep. He was the high priest of the sun god at the temple of Ra in Heliopolis. He was also a chancellor for Djoser, and presumably the architect behind Djoser's pyramid. Looks like he was one important guy. But back to the mummies. They were found in a series of burial wells. Each mummy was sealed in intricately colored wooden coffins. There was also a pristine sarcophagus, presumed to contain chapters from the Book of the Dead. I don't know about you, but I just hope that they haven't been reading from the book. Number 9. Mummy comes to life. Mummies have captivated the imagination of humans across the globe since they were first discovered beneath the sands of Egypt. They would come alive in kids' nightmares and haunt their thoughts when awake. But have you ever wondered what they really looked like in real life? Once you manage to get past the rotten linen and the dry, deteriorating flesh, you start realizing that they were real people at some point. And to be able to know what they looked like when they were alive thousands of years ago would be nothing short of amazing. Well, state-of-the-art technology allowed us to do just that. It all started because of the one bitter truth surrounding mummies: they are extremely fragile. Trying to see what hides beneath the linen wrapping usually damages the mummy. So experts decided to do CT scans of the entire remains. This enabled them to clearly see what each level of the remains holds. They could see all the amulets that were placed inside the wrappings as protection, and possibly even determine the cause of death. But another useful perk was that it enabled experts to recreate what the mummified person looked like in real life. One such study was done at the University of Melbourne, and the results were fascinating. The process involves recreating the skull from the scanned data. Then, a facial reconstruction expert adds layers of muscle and skin. Before you know it, you are staring into the face of a person who died over 2,000 years ago. Number 8. Temple of Zeus in Egypt? Egypt is world famous for its pyramids, legends of pharaohs, and strange deities. And who could forget the mummies, right? But recently, experts unearthed a temple that was completely different. Located in Sinai, near the Suez Canal, they found a massive temple with Greek inscriptions. Ancient Greeks were famous for traversing the seas and starting new colonies. And when they went, they took their religion with them. If a colony was successful, meaning it probably became an important trade stop for merchants of the ancient world, the Greeks would build lavish temples to honor their gods. Well, the Greeks in Sinai built a massive granite temple for their god Zeus Cassius. This was a deity that combined the elements of the god of the sky and thunder Zeus and the weather god Cassius, and it was thought to be the protector of sailors and merchants. But this temple might not have been built by a colony. It was constructed during the Ptolemaic period, when Egypt was ruled by a Greek dynasty, descending from one of the generals of Alexander the Great. In order to rule Egypt effectively, the Ptolemies knew that they had to make a cross between the Greek and Egyptian deities. So this blend created new gods that both religions could relate to. The archaeologists found the remains of 2 pink granite columns that marked the gate of the temple. The columns were 1 meter wide and 8 meters tall. So this must have been an amazing structure in its day. Number 7. The proof of Israelite bondage. If you ever heard Bible stories, you must have heard the one about Moses and how he delivered the Hebrew people from being slaves of the Egyptian Pharaoh. This story is so embedded in Hebrew culture that they're retelling it every year during Passover. The miraculous escape across the Red Sea gave rise to the country of Israel and has been the topic of numerous Hollywood interpretations over the decades. But many have wondered if it was all myth or if there was any truth to it. The final confirmation came from Flinders Petrie, who was excavating Merimpeta's temple near Luxor in 1896. He later wrote that the site was disastrously dull, and he even contemplated leaving it. But there was one final corner to be cleared, and there he saw it, a black granite stele over 10 feet high and 5 feet wide. Petrie and his epigrapher Spielberg spent the afternoon writing down the inscriptions. Spielberg read the names of several towns, but one was not familiar to him: Israr. Petrie was blown away. He immediately knew that this word meant Israel. Later at dinner, he commented to his friends that this stele would be the most important thing he ever found. And he was right. This slab of granite practically proved that the Israelites worked as slaves on the construction of Egyptian monuments. While the other towns were described as city-states, the inscription describes the Israelites as people without a king, which is also written in the Bible. Number 6. Golden Tongue. If you love the Austin Powers movies, you probably remember the crazy Dutch villain called Goldmember. Well, he's not the only one who likes gold. While excavating the ancient Egyptian town of Top-Osiris Magna, researchers uncovered something really peculiar. They found a 2,000-year-old mummy with a golden tongue. It was found in one of 16 poorly preserved burial sites that were basically rock-cut crypts. Experts say that this was a very popular form of burial during Egypt's Greco-Roman period. But to understand why the mummy had a gold leaf in its mouth, we need to understand mummification, how and why it was done. The process is not for the squeamish, so be warned. Mummification relied on drying out the body. This meant that all the internal organs had to be removed. The organs were placed in special jars, and only the heart was placed back in the body. After the drying out period, the deceased was stuffed with straw and wrapped in linen, with various protective amulets placed in the wraps. The mummy was placed in a sarcophagus and surrounded by treasure. This was to ensure the person's safe passage into the world of the dead. And that's how we get to the golden tongue. Well, the real one had to be removed. So, if they wanted the deceased to be able to speak in the afterlife, they had to give him a new one. Those ancient Egyptians were real problem solvers. Number 5. The Lost City Underwater. This story is as amazing and incredible as they get. It follows a group of scientists who made an unbelievable discovery back in 2000. They stumbled upon an entire city that was lost under the Mediterranean Sea for a millennium. No, it's not Atlantis, but it is just as good. The name of the city is Heraklion. I guess its founders really loved those stories about Hercules, am I right? To be fair, it was the Greeks who called it Heraklion. To the ancient Egyptians, it was known as Thonis. The city is believed to have been established in the 8th century BCE. It quickly became incredibly important because it was the main port of entry for ships in the Mediterranean that wanted to enter Egypt. Built upon islands in the Nile Delta, Heraklion boasted massive buildings and astonishing temples devoted to the Egyptian god Ammon and the Greek demigod Hercules. It was intersected by various canals and was basically the Egyptian Venice of ancient times. So how is it possible that a commercial, religious, and residential center of Egypt goes missing? Experts believe it was a combination of natural factors, like earthquakes and tsunamis, aided by rising sea levels. Eventually, around 1200 years ago, the sandy soil beneath the city became liquid, and Heraklion was swallowed by the sea. In the same way it was covered by the sand, its memory became shrouded in legend. It wasn't until 2000 that the sea decided to uncover its secret, and archaeologists finally found it, remarkably well preserved. Number 4. The Heretic Pharaoh. There are many stories that tell of the times of the pharaohs, but not many are as strange and intriguing as the story of Akhenaten, the father of Tutankhamun. He was originally known as Amenhotep IV, and he had some really crazy ideas. I mean, everyone and their grandma knows that ancient Egypt was a polytheistic society. They didn't have one god, they had many gods, such as Osiris, Isis, Anubis, Thoth, Ra, Horus, and Bastet, to name a few. But this guy had other plans. He decided that he wanted to instate a monotheistic religion, and the one true god would be Aten, or the sun disk. He didn't do this overnight, but tried to do it gradually by building more and more temples of Aten. But still, he needed to act fast. So he built an entire city he called Akhenaten, and took the name for himself, meaning horizon of the sun. This was supposed to establish him as the messenger of the god Aten on earth. It was a little foolish to think that he would be able to change thousands of years of religious beliefs in just a few decades, but hey, people have tried to do even crazier things. The thing is, the people never really climbed the Akhenaten hype train, and after his death, things returned to normal. The capital of Egypt once again became Thebes, and Akhenaten, or Tel El Amarna as it is known today, was abandoned and quickly swallowed by the desert. Its remains are still being excavated. Number 3. Egyptian tattoos. When an ordinary person thinks of Egypt, what comes to mind are the pyramids, mummies, and pharaohs, right? But did you know Egyptians used to have tattoos? Yeah, me neither. The British Museum currently exhibits 7 Egyptian mummies, and the strangest thing about them is that they have been naturally mummified. No one knows exactly how or why this happened. Some experts believe it was a combination of circumstances, such as being buried in a shallow grave in the hottest time of the year, which brought to a rapid drying of the bodies. To make it even stranger, they originate from the pre-dynastic period, meaning over 5,000 years ago. So, it is quite understandable that these remains are treated with the utmost care. The best way to examine them was to do CT scans. This revealed even more interesting things. It turned out that 2 of the 7 mummies had tattoos. This is extremely rare in archaeology, because it doesn't happen often that you find a naturally mummified person with the skin still intact sufficiently to preserve even tattoos. The oldest tattooed mummy so far was Utsi the Iceman. If you haven't heard of Utsi, watch my video on 20 most incredible things found in ice. But after dating the Egyptian mummies from hair and bone samples, it turned out these were just as old. But there's one key difference. Utsi's tattoos were done for medical and healing reasons. The Egyptian tattoos were artistic depictions of animals. Number 2. The Lost 4th Pyramid. Ah, the Pyramids of Giza, the symbol of Egypt. There is no other symbol that represents this country more than the 3 pyramids, the final resting places of a father, son, and grandson, Khufu, Khafra, and Menkaure. This family from the 25th century BC represented the 4th dynasty. They ruled for over 150 years, and were one of the most powerful dynasties in ancient Egypt, which was the most advanced civilization in the world. But recently, this trifecta of pyramids is being questioned. According to some experts, there is a possibility that they were not alone, for another pyramid was made. In the land of Mordor, high on the hills of Abu Rawash, 5 miles away from the Giza Plateau, lie the ruins that threaten to change what we know about the history of ancient Egypt. The reason this area is mostly unknown is that it's located in the middle of a strictly off-limits military zone, so almost no one was allowed to enter. But who could stop the Egyptian Indiana Jones, Dr. Zahi Hawass? As the director of Egypt's Supreme Council of Antiquities, he managed to allow a team of experts to start excavating the site, which seems to be the same age as the Pyramid of Khufu. It is possible that the legends that speak of the lost fourth pyramid of Pharaoh Djedefre could in fact be true. Djedefre was supposedly a vain and tyrannical ruler who murdered his way to the throne. Only time will tell if the legends were really true. Number 1. Book of the Dead. Well, even though we were told we must not do it, we still are. Because there probably is no item more valuable when it comes to the beliefs of ancient Egyptians than the Book of the Dead. Today, Christians and Muslims devote themselves to living their lives according to their beliefs, so that when they die, they may be granted entry into heaven. Similarly to that, ancient Egyptians lived their lives concerned about gaining entry into the afterlife, and the Book of the Dead was therefore an extremely valuable collection of spells that enable the soul of the deceased to navigate the afterlife. It was like mummification was just the beginning of a long and perilous journey, and the only guide for the soul was the Book of the Dead. When the mummy was wrapped, protective amulets were placed in specific areas to aid in protecting the soul. These amulets correspond with the spells in the book. The Egyptians believed that if the body was well preserved, the soul could find its way back and use the same body in the afterlife. But these perks were reserved only for the elite. There's no way an ordinary peasant could afford to be mummified and buried with such splendor. Also, no two books of the dead are really the same. Although they contain the same spells, each one was made specifically for the person that was buried. And the name of the Book of the Dead is a weird English translation. The old Egyptians referred to it as spells for going forth by day. Sounds even cooler in my opinion. Well, thanks for sticking around till the end. I hope you learned something new and had some fun. If you're looking for another dose of awesomeness, check out our video library and indulge yourself. Also, I wouldn't mind if you subscribed and liked the video. I wouldn't mind at all. See you next time.